Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of City Chatter, the City of Grand Forks podcast. I'm John Bernstrom, the Public Information Officer for the City of Grand Forks. This is episode... What are we at? We're at 15.
It's the second time around, so I want it's been
15.
16 then. Or did you skip somebody?
Yeah, Ken Veen's coming up. We're gonna do it.
Oh, okay.
You're in front of him, so
All
we're at
right.
15. This week's guest, Mayor Bochenski. if you haven't caught that yet, Mayor Bochenski is our guest. Mayor, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully they know me by now.
I hope so.
Hopefully doing my job enough.
I hope so. Speaking of doing your job, this is the only political thing we're going to get into before we get into city business. You have recently announced you're going to seek a second term as mayor with an election coming up in June of 2024. I'm not going to get into what you want to do or past 4 years. I want to get into your house. How was that conversation with the family? And was it a long conversation?
Well, it probably was a 4-year conversation. I think, sometimes you're careful what you wish for. You just might get it. So when we won last time, obviously the first couple of years were pretty challenging dealing with COVID. I had a really tough work-life balance, and we kind of figured it out over the last couple of years. And in the last 6 months, we started becoming a reality, thinking we could probably do it again. And then really we held off till after Thanksgiving, and we really kind of had some of those deep conversations. And in the end, my wife kind of said, well, you know what, honey, you're good at it. I want you to, it'd be a shame for you not to do it because of me. I think we can figure it out, and you're good at it. So I want to see you keep going. So that was kind of the final decision. The missus made that. And then once she makes it, I make announcements really quick. So it's out there so she can't change her mind.
Put her in a spot. I will say this, whether city employee, elected official, having a family behind you goes a long way.
I don't think you could do without it. I mean, it wouldn't be worth it. So if you're going to it's going to cause strife at home, and it has at times, but we've carried that burden. But if it goes too far, it just isn't worth it because family's the thing that's most important at the end of the day.
I will say from my standpoint, just as an employee, sometimes it's nice to come home and I'm like, hey, I don't work with you. I just got to talk through the day, and then we're good at the end of the day and reset for tomorrow.
Exactly. I mean, that's the foundation of every good person is building those bonds, and you have to work at it too. But I'm excited. It should be an exciting time. The family's on board. I said this the other day. My wife's like, if she's 60-40 on something, but she decides to say yes on the 60, then she'll get 100% behind it. So it's like, it's like Black Panther from the Anchorman. 30% of the time, it works every
100%
time.
of the time?
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. So
something like that.
So I'm saying if Mrs. Bochenski has her mindset on something, get out of her way.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to point it. Get out of the way because I'm coming too. Yeah.
That's good. All right, on to some city news. It was we had a 3-hour council meeting last committee of the whole meeting. Lots of things were discussed. So let's hit on a couple of those. First one was there was a bridge discussion, but it wasn't necessarily bridge and a plan. There's this joint agreement with Polk County, Grand Forks County, City of East Grand Forks on a study of how to get to a bridge, and that consultant SRF came back to council. What were they looking for?
Well, there's another process that I believe it's called the PEL. I can't remember what those. There's a lot of
there's a lot of acronyms in there.
But there's a further step before we can get to NEMA, which is the next step to actually finish off the environmental study.
Right.
Let's say. But I think the most interesting thing that they came back with was largely we don't have a whole lot of set structure for this in North Dakota. So a lot of our rules would follow the Minnesota rules because usually if whatever side's more strict, you follow those rules.
Sure.
Since we have a little bit more freedom in our government, with state government, we would follow all the Minnesota rules. Well, they either they're starting to enforce it or they're starting to enforce it stronger. But there was a Minnesota DNR rule dating back to 1976 that said you can't even enter the 100-year floodway, even on your abutments or where your ramp goes up to the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge would have to go over the floodway.
You'd have to start behind behind the flood wall. So you couldn't even extend into there with any part of the structure. It would all have to be above essentially the flood wall. So you're talking about a massive high bridge, and it also would add 10 to 30% of the length on either end of it, which it's a quarter mile you're adding. It could be a quarter mile.
You're talking at, I'm going to say 32nd. I realize that's the hot word, but that's the bridge starting somewhere by Cherry almost.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking
that's crazy.
Another 50, 60 homes directly impacted. And I mean, that buyout alone would be insane, let alone all the people. So to me, it's kind of funny because Minnesota side, East Grand Forks, Polk County pushed this so hard that, now we're getting data that the state has actually set parameters that almost make, I'm not even going to say almost, it makes it impossible. I don't think there's any point in talking about it because this bridge would be bigger than the Kennedy Bridge, taller than the Kennedy Bridge by 10 feet.
It'd be huge.
You're going to put that in a neighborhood and you're going to have this half a mile sort of run up to get up to that height and then figure out how you're going to access that from your local streets that are at a different, much lower level. So I think it really, to me, I don't see any appetite at all to ever spend another cent or even a moment talking about an intercity bridge. It's time to move on. That is dead as far as I'm concerned. So let's move to Merrifield and get that done. So someone's not in the same problem, having the same problem 30, 40 years from now, and that gets built around. So let's get it done ahead of time.
Right, and along those lines, with those parameters on the it's Minnesota DNR, right? That's their rule.
Yeah.
That pretty much forces, if you want to build a bridge, it has to be in a rural area, and then you develop around the bridge, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think it forces that, and it really restricts any issues with the water flow. It just it takes all that off the table, which is probably smart, but it makes it untenable and not possible. So at the end of the day, it was an ask for another $7,000 to continue this process. And this process does include looking at Merrifield and talks about some of the grant, but I think at this point, with all the fight we've had with the MPO and through this, there was no appetite to spend another cent. So the $7,000 ask to increase this recent study, I guess call it a change order.
Mm-hmm.
You start to wonder if they knew the change order was coming when they first signed this thing up or not. But either way, we turned it down as a city council. It was a split vote, but it didn't get enough to pass. And I think the other person that was missing was Kyle Kavami, and he would have been a no vote more than likely. So
well, and that was an interesting procedural thing yesterday. A tie vote is now this is at a committee level. At a city council level, you're technically the tiebreaker if you run it, if that's the case.
Yeah.
But a tie vote is equivalent of a no vote.
Yeah, so I mean, if there's a tie, at the committee of the whole, it's going to go forward now to the city council with a recommendation of a no vote.
Right.
But it'll still go to the city council meeting
To discuss.
If we're short a member and ends up a 3-3 vote, I will be voting no. So I mean, just to make that clear. So even if the and even if, quite frankly, if somebody came and changed their mind, I think I would probably they need 5 votes. I would just say at this point, I would likely veto the thing because it's done. I think we need to move on, and either it needs to be focused completely on Merrifield, then we'll pay all, we'll do what it takes to make sure we get that one and drive it forward because we're going to have to. But if it's going to mention intercity bridge, not a single cent or staff time should be pushed towards that at all, in my opinion.
All right, well, that's enough bridge discussion until the next one.
That sounds good.
Also, there were an update regarding indoor turf aquatics. We now, by we I mean the city, the sales tax passed that ordinance has been put into place, I believe, in city code, or does it need one more reading?
No,
that one's done.
I signed that, I think, yesterday.
So that one's there. So now it's started having conversations. What does this thing look like? In working with engineers and along those lines, this may take 2 contractors, one turf, one water. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it may take 2 architects I think we're gonna as we go out and do an RFQ for an architect, it's gonna be, you can propose as one facility together, or you can propose one facility that's broken down into 2 parts. I mean, the biggest thing now, we just want to get it right. You're spending this money. This project needs to be. We're talking 50 years. I think it needs to be a 100-year project. That means the pool, all the mechanicals of that need to be 100-year mechanical. I mean, you're going to have replacements, obviously, different pumps and parts, but the main structure, it needs to last 100 years. And you got to be very careful, make sure you've done everything right to make sure that all of these, every part of this facility can last that long. So we only get one shot at this. You're not going to, do this. And that's also, we talk about courts and how many courts, how many, how big is the field? Is there a track? How many pickleball courts? How big is the playground? All these different things. I would, prefer to try to get it all in if we can afford it financially and have enough of a cushion, rather than trying to phase it, thinking we're going to get to it later. I think you really have one shot, and that's your biggest scales of economies of scales to do it all at once. So I'm excited. I mean, this is it's been challenging whether you like the project or not. It's going. Hislop's coming down, and we could have taken a step back as a community, or we can take a step forward and put something bigger and better that'll continue to draw people here. Is it going to be a massive draw? I mean, I think it's going to help if someone's living in Grafton, Greenbush, Park River, wherever, wide swath across the north there, and they're deciding where I'm going to go for a job. Maybe they don't drive past Grand Forks and take a job in Fargo. Maybe they say Grand Forks is the place instead of Minneapolis. It's safer, and they've got a lot of the amenities. So that's my hope, on top of everyone that lives here gets to use these things every day.
Well, and I think that's the step 2 or 3 of economic driver. I think step 1, an indoor turf facility. I've got kids that play soccer. I got kids that played youth football. That's a business in its own. I mean, I think you've been around a little bit chasing indoor turf.
Well, hey, the beauty is in Florida, you don't need to have indoor turf.
Sure, that helps. That helps.
When there's no snow, when you have seasons, I know you were probably around last spring. They hardly had a season.
Hardly at all.
And that's too bad. And that's just a matter of when the timing is for those sports. But we have an option now, and they can play in the winter. I think we have a really athletic town, and it's great for kids to be engaged in that. So let's make those options available. It helps helps to have a healthy populace. That's a tough word, sentence to get out.
And even from the standpoint, from it's still public, but from a private side, like UND recognized, boy, indoor turf goes a long way for our athletics. So they built one, they went to donors, and that is turned into one of the busiest facilities in Grand Forks.
Yeah, and with Hislop coming down, that's only going to get busier
busier
because there's a lot of other activities. There was more than obviously courts. There's strength training. There was a lot going on at Hislop, the pool. So some of that will transfer over to that facility, and some will transfer to ours.
So speaking of Hislop, you were an athlete at UND. I worked in athletics in a roundabout way. Spent a lot of time in Hislop. There's some memories in there. Did the hockey team spend time in there? All the offices were in there.
I didn't spend a lot of time. So the hockey offices got moved to the Ralph once I came. So as soon as I came in, they had moved them over there. But I do some intramural volleyball, and I'd be in there shooting hoops sometimes. So I would definitely go in there to blow off steam and hang out. But we didn't have locker rooms or a regular schedule. When our training we did at the old Ralph and at the football stadium underneath, which was.
That was interesting in its own.
Phantom of the Opera back then type of stuff. Yeah, some good memories there. So that had more memories, and they tore down Memorial Stadium definitely.
Did you ever win the Ironman as a hockey player?
I did not. You know what? I always missed it. I had really good.
Were you one of those players that got a mystery injury?
No, I never missed that.
Oh, okay.
I missed out because I couldn't. One of the events to get 10 points, or I don't know, it was like 1,000 points because it was broken down by how many inches you could reach your toes, and I could only get about 3.
Oh.
So like Matt Jones would go down like 12 inches past his toes, so all of a sudden he's got 12,000 points. So
and he couldn't pass it.
Well, I'd have to run the mile in like 3 minutes 20 seconds in order to make up that. If
That's
you ran
funny.
a 7-minute mile, so it was a little bit weighted odds. So a guy like me that wasn't flexible was a step up. I'm making excuses, but I was always in the top, probably the top 4 or 5, definitely.
I bring up in a class that would be before you, goalie Andy Kohler. I got to know pretty well, and he was always good at maybe twisting an ankle just before dry line started.
Well, in all fairness, the goalies were never the best athletes. From what I know.
No, and just Andy, are you okay? I'm fine. I'll be fine.
Just fighting through, trying to make it to game one.
Trying to make it. Yeah, trying to do it. There was also a couple of discussions yesterday during the meeting. These are County of Grand Forks, City of Grand Forks government discussions. Parking ramp. County has a parking ramp that they want the city to take over, but then also the city may be moving health department and ripple effects to all that. Can you talk about that relationship with the county and some of these projects?
Well, I think Todd, we've talked about it at length with Todd Phelan, the city administrator. Like, if we don't help each other out, if the county has to raise taxes and to pay for a parking ramp, every person in the city of Grand Forks pays county taxes too.
Yes.
If there's a way we can take that with our other 2 ramps and keep the cost down and share that burden so it doesn't end up going to the taxpayers, then that's what it's all about. And it's the same thing with these facilities. So for 20 years, I guess it's been more than 20 years now, we've shared space with the sheriff's department has been in the police department, the sheriff's office has been in the police department, and our public health has been in the county building. So we have a contract that shares those 2 leases. Well, police department's grown. PSAP has grown.
They need space.
They need space. So this has been something talked about for 20 years. The county's got to really get on doing something for the sheriff, and it's taken a while. But so with that happening, the sheriff's eventually going to be out of that building. Well, we no longer then have that lease agreement to have our public health in the county building.
Sure.
So we're getting out ahead of that and looking at other options. So we're not in charge of the maintenance. We're looking at building a facility right next to City Hall, where we can utilize the Hive, utilize other meeting places without having to build a new building and take care of all that maintenance. Just a lease payment, and then you can get out of it in 20 years after that. So it's really about trying to consolidate all the resources that we have, so we're not building, because we know the cost of new construction now is insane. So
crazy.
Let's get those core services down with what we have done with what we have. And even as the town grows, if you become more efficient as a government, you don't have to grow your staff. You can become more efficient at what you do, automate as much as you can. I've always been a fan of, let's get the best equipment out, get good equipment out there so that it's shorter amount of time for drivers on, whether it's plows, we've done some leasing programs. We've tried to be creative to be more efficient. And with that, I don't think we always have to grow. So looking at growing government as the city grows, you should look at it as growing efficiency, I guess. And so that's a piece of that. So we're doing, long story short, we're trying to do long-term planning, and we're trying to come up with a deal with the county, and they've got a lot that could be, that we could swap that really doesn't have a lot of benefit to the city where it's located. And granted, the city could sell it, but if it's right next to the county, we could swap for that. And as we grow the water treatment plant, that's in a good spot. So anyway, I think it makes sense, and we'll get there. We just got to find the right combination for everybody.
That's the interesting. Mr. Phelan brought it up a couple of times during the meeting that the parking structure, maintain parking. If that's not there, it's 300 spots. All that fun stuff. But its proximity to a potential South Downtown development in the old water treatment plant. Do you have any update on movement on potential that part of town for those that are wondering? It's down by the Point Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, it's the namesakes of the city. It's at the Grand Forks, so
It's right at the Forks. Yep.
You got 3rd Street, which goes there, and it's always been kind of a dangerous intersection to me. 3rd Street and Minnesota Avenue coming down that hill. That's the Point Bridge there, Minnesota Avenue.
It's blind.
It's not a great,
Right.
and so I've always thought, if we can close off 3rd Street, 4th can get, you can just scoot over on 4th and then get to that intersection. So to me, it was pushing up to the dike. That gives you, not only almost 2 full blocks, but you're taking over, you're vacating a street. So I think there's a lot of it. We're going to work on that in the first quarter here. But with that, I think it's pretty exciting. You got something that's never been on the tax rolls. This giant 2 blocks of space downtown.
Never been
could,
on the tax
yeah,
rolls.
that's so. But you have the potential to have a $40-50 million project there. You add that up at like a 1.6%. You've got a significant taxpayer in that. So
Right.
Should be pretty exciting.
No, I think that's a fun one. I've had that conversation even with the current development that UND is doing with the softball diamond and I go, that parking lot has never been taxed. I don't think it ever has, right? And now, yes, it may not be a lot to start, but it's more than zero.
Well, and you already have police, fire service, you already have infrastructure there. So $50 million project, 1.6%, that's $800,000. So that's $800,000 that spreads the cost over everybody else. So even if you do some type of TIF deal to get a nice project done there, having zero now, something that's already served, even if you get a 20% of that, you're adding $160,000 a year. That helps offset everybody else's taxes.
That goes a long way. A long way. All right, that's enough city business. Mayor, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We've been doing this now for a couple of episodes, and I think it's gone pretty well. Our topic, I'm going to call it our fun topic, New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
All right. So I mean, some history here. Do you know where New Year's resolutions started? Because I didn't. I was
Where did they
surprised.
start. I have no clue. I could make up some guess, but it'd probably make me look foolish.
Well, that's right. Well, I was foolish looking it up. This is all according to the internet. About 4,000 years ago, the ancient Babylonians celebrated New Year's, if you will, in March, planting season. It's a new agricultural season, and they did a celebration that involved pretty much, I don't know, it was quasi-religious. Repay all your debts, start the year debt free, and by debts, return all the stuff you borrowed, and
all those wrenches back to your neighbor,
right, and then all those I'm going to be a good person, bless the crops, right? That then transitioned into Julius Caesar.
Okay.
So January, I'm gonna butcher this name, is named after Janus, a god that was two-faced, that was looking forward and looking back.
Okay.
New year, old year. So they started celebrating in January.
Okay.
And evidently resolutions followed them as well.
Well, that's good here. I thought you were talking about Babylonian times. So that was going to be human sacrifice. So that's a lot better.
Who knows what the
if you didn't pay back your debts,
exactly.
Nobody knows what happened. Okay.
And then I found this interesting. I believe these are 2019 numbers. About 45% of Americans make a New Year's resolution. Right? We all want to lose weight.
Yeah.
All want to get in shape. Only about 8% follow through.
That's actually 8% follow through their New Year's resolution. I think that's shockingly high.
Wow,
how many people are finished by like a weekend? You go to the gym and like January 2nd it's slammed. Like by January 5th it's back
good
to normal.
because everyone says this is work.
Some of those classes are like filled, and you're like, who are all these new people? And they're like all into it. I'm like, you don't look familiar.
You're right, yeah. Now this is coming from somebody who's Mayor goes to the gym all the time.
I try to. I gotta have some escape, right?
Well, yeah, it's healthy. It's healthy for you, Mayor. That's all I have for this episode of City Chatter. I think we've covered most things, right? It was a busy meeting. We're week and a half into the new year, and we're covering some ground.
There's a lot going on. I mean, sometimes it'll slow down for a little bit in that January-February period, but we are just rocking and rolling and got a lot going on. So it's exhausting, but it's also exciting. So we'll have a good 2024 and just keep moving forward.
As Mr. Phelan says, if we ever have a council meeting and there's no agenda items on it, that means the city is not doing well.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, Mayor, thank you very much.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you.
Mayor Bochenski joining us. Appreciate that. And for those of you wanting to watch past episodes of the City Chatter podcast, go to grandforksgov.com. youtube.com/podcast. You can see all of our previous 14 episodes. And thank you to the mayor, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.